that as well as a whole from the ASALT to make sure that we bring in the best and brightest young men and women. We've had great success under our Grow the Acquisition Workforce initiative. To date, as of last week, and I get the numbers every so often from Craig Spizak, just a few days ago, we were 1,676 hired interns. We're on target to hire over 2,000 by the end of FY15. And I want to describe one success. There's many that are out there, but I just want to describe one, and I'll pick on PEO Strive for a second in Orlando. Jim Blake, I don't know if Jim's here. I don't see Jim out there. Rob Ringa, I see you right in front of me. Stand up. Rob is a deputy PEO for PEO Strive. So several years ago, when we started Grow the Acquisition Workforce, Jim Blake and Rob Ringa started an acquisition academy because they couldn't get talent and hire them in as midterm or journeymen. They had to start from the beginning. So they started their own academy. To date, they have hired over 100 young interns that have come into PEO Strive. Almost, your attrition rate is less, about 1%, maybe a little bit less than 1% out of those 100 plus that have graduated. They stay inside PEO Strive, and there's a reason why. There's been a couple that have left, one that I believe has left service completely, but a couple others that have gone off to work in other organizations because their spouse was in the military and they've moved. But they've stayed inside the Army system, so others are benefiting from Jim's hard work. But as a great example, just recently, they went out and solicited for 17 positions for the next Acquisition Academy, resumes from college, universities, or others who might want to join PEO Strive. They got 2,600 applications. 2,600 applications for 17 positions. Just one of those folks that they brought into their academy was the top graduate from University of Central Florida in business finance. Graduated with a perfect record. Is now coming in to be an Army intern. Now, they don't just come in to go through training. They actually go through a rigorous 11 weeks, and they challenge them. It's a very disciplined process, and they're challenged from day one. But we want to hire them for life. So another thing that Jim and Rob did was they bring them out for a week to be with soldiers. So they take them up to Fort Benning, and some of them jump off the tower. I've got pictures of some of those young interns. Can you imagine a 22-year-old college intern jumping off the tower with soldiers at Fort Benning? They actually do that. Some others get to jump with, I think it's the Silver Eagles that actually jump out of airplanes and they do a tandem jump. So what they do, they eat in the mess hall with soldiers too. So what happens when you do something like that? You have hired them for life. For the next 30 years that they serve as a government civilian in our Army, we have hired them for life. We need more of those kinds of efforts. There are those out there, but I think as a model, what Jim and Rob have done is just truly remarkable, and more of what we actually need to accomplish within Army acquisition as we continue to build this incredible workforce that we have out there. Many of you know that there's over 14 acquisition career fields, but I'd like to specifically highlight one which is so critical that I want to emphasize, and that's contracting, because our Army has been working so hard since the Gansler study to rejuvenate and rebuild the contracting capability within our Army. We get a lot of help from OSD and a lot of help from Congress, and that has really allowed us to go off and do what I think are some extraordinary things. We've increased our 1102 workforce by 38% since 2005. It was at a low of about 5,000 when the horrors of Kuwait and other places around the Middle East occurred. We had to do something, and the Gansler report again was something that helped us trigger in on doing the right things. Today, we have about over 7,000 acquisition contracting professionals that are civilian, working mainly in AMC. You've got probably 70% of them, but in the Corps of Engineers and others. And there's another about 900 or so military, both officers and NCOs, that we brought into our formation. By the way, we're getting some extraordinary non-commissioned officers For every panel that we run, about half or more of them, almost all of them have some level, an associate's degree. About half of them have bachelor's degrees. A few have masters, some have doctorates that are coming, non-commissioned officers, that are coming into Army contracting. We are doing the right things, not only for contracting, but for program management, engineering, logistics, etc. I want to talk a little bit about some of our challenges we have as well, because we have some things that we have to work on. And we are going to work on them, and we are going to solve them. One of them is, whatever we did yesterday is not enough. So we're going to challenge this workforce to deliver quicker, more efficiently, and put greater capability in the arms of our soldiers, and do it more effectively. By the way, let me talk a little bit about education as a whole. We are well educated, the acquisition workforce. We have roughly 35,000 members, or 82% of the 42,000 that have advanced degrees. Many of them have doctorate degrees. They're science and technology engineers. They are remarkable. The Army is high technology at the end of the day. And anyone who comes out of a university that has an engineering degree, if they come to our Army, they're going to be challenged in executing the mission. They're going to be challenged, and they'll have very productive work that will help our Army and help us get greater capability in the hands of our soldiers. Our acquisition professional certification rate is currently about 91.7%. By the way, it's the highest across OSD. The highest across OSD. We have done remarkable work. If you go back to around 2007, it was at 6 years. And we're going to get better. This year, we're even going to do better than we did last year. In the last year alone, over 13,000 members of the Acquisition Corps have achieved some level of certification greater than they had a year ago. And again, our goal this year is 94% certified, and by FY14, we'll be at 96%. 30 September, with the help of a lot of teammates up here, we finished at over 97% across our 42,000 strong. And we'll even get better at that. I mentioned our challenges. I'll just mention some. We have too many people that do not pass DAU classes, some classes in particular. So we're taking that on. We have too many teammates that sometimes don't show up for class. And so we miss that opportunity to get someone certified. We're going to work on that. We still have work to do on our certification rates. We'll never be 100%, but we're certainly going to get a lot better as time goes on. So how will we do that? First, I share this with all of you. The acquisition workforce isn't going to improve greatly just by the Honorable Heidi Shyu or Bill Phillips working on it. This is absolutely commander's business. This is commander's business. We are engaging with commanders who have acquisition workforce folks inside their formation to take this on, to continue to grow a stronger and a better acquisition workforce. Every quarter, I chair a GEO-SES summit where we bring key leaders across all the Army commands, and we get after the key issues that are affecting the acquisition workforce. It is commander's business. It's acquisition, obviously, but it's the vice and it's the chief and it's the rest of the Army leadership that has to allow us to get after this. I think in closing, we have a unique opportunity to improve our way of doing business. And at the end of the day, a stronger, better acquisition workforce will only benefit our soldiers, because that will allow us to, again, make sure that we never fail them. We never allow them to go into an even fight. And we are going to give them the absolute best equipment that we can. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shyu, for having me sit on this panel with this very august set of panel members, all of whom are partners in what we are going forward with. As Ms. Shyu spoke earlier about this new process that we are doing within the Army, a process that looks 30 years out to assess emerging threats against our current and planned programs, enabling us to identify the emerging capability gaps It is the Army's S&T investments that will be focused on closing those gaps. But that's not enough for us, because the Army S&T community has a responsibility to lay the foundation for the Army's future technology needs. It is up to us to help drive the future capabilities with the partners you see here on this panel. But we must be good stewards of the taxpayer money. We must focus our investments where we must, those critical Army-specific areas like armor. And we must leverage from industry, international partners, and other government investments where we can. As budgets decline, it is even more important to take a longer-term look at program planning, to realize that what may be seen as an easy cut to programs now may cause us long-term ramifications. It is for this very reason that we are conducting this 30-year look and aligning our investments to support the programs of record, developing the corresponding science and technology strategy that will prioritize those investments to address those needs of the future. During these past years of war, we have learned some valuable lessons in realizing that some of the least interesting technologies may in fact be some of our most valuable investments. I've often heard logisticians say that they are underappreciated. I can't help but agree, because we've learned that investing in technologies that reduce operational and sustainment costs don't usually garner as much sense of enthusiasm as, say, that latest gun or the new missile. But they do go a long way to save the Army money that can be used to buy more equipment and give more capability to the soldiers, and certainly it goes a long way to increase soldier readiness. A greater emphasis has been placed as of late on developing fuel and energy efficient capabilities, lighter and more precise weapons, and yes, you heard General McQuiston talk about condition-based maintenance. Those strategies do pay off. Within the science and technology community, we are beginning to stress the development of new capability that is not only manufacturable, but also reliable. And when we do that, that helps us to ensure effective transition into programs of record. We take on the burden now within the S&T community to design things that will be transitionable, and the PMs no longer have to add that to the burden that they bear to get something to the field. I must admit that the effort to look holistically into the future has been a great opportunity for the S&T community. That's a bit self-serving, I know. This is the first time since the war started that we have Army leadership taking a serious look at what we in the S&T can and should be doing for the future. It gives the community a forum to talk about technical opportunities that we can bring to the mix. And it enables the program executive officers and their staff to see what improvements the science and technology community can bring to influence and increase the capability of their systems. Always looking for that next capability, we've been conducting some recent concept explorations. Over the last year, we did some small group gatherings, say 50 people or so, a combination of industry, academia, and our Army experts in technology and requirements, and asked them to think about the world 2040 timeframe. That's a world we just don't comprehend. And we challenge those teams to set their minds out there and look for opportunities of the future to develop some basic research themes that need investment now in order to be realized by the time we get there. Basic research takes a long time to develop. This isn't a planned thing that we can say, well, in 10 years we're going to have success. We don't know what will be success. We need to start now, and we need to be consistent with where we're going. So we looked at those opportunities, and I'll just give you a few. You heard General McQuiston say soldier omniscience. What do we mean by that? Well, we mean providing that soldier the organic capability to detect, understand, and anticipate the factors, be they political, military, economic, social, or even infrastructure, and form a sphere of actionable knowledge for their operational environment. We talk about increased force protection without sacrificing the ability to accomplish the mission. Right now, you know we trade mobility for weight when we talk about force protection, especially on the soldier. including things like self-healing armor and networks or non-electronic based communications. Those are things that we can start research now and realize the benefits of those in the future. We looked at enhanced overmatch through precision, scalable effects and modular affordable packages. Affordability is a key driver for the science and technology community. It is no longer good enough just to demonstrate a capability. It's got to be an affordable capability, or we can't implement it within the Army. We are looking at line-of-sight and non-line-of-sight systems with layered and tailorable effects from non-lethal to lethal capabilities. Those are things that we'd like to see in the future. And finally, I need to talk about the S&T enterprise. All 22 laboratories and research, engineering, and development centers, all over 12,000 science and engineers, and you heard that most of them reside in the Army Materiel Command. They are some of the world's leading experts in armor-specific areas. I mean, in Army-specific areas, to include armor. But the budgets are getting tighter, and we will need to leverage good ideas and investments wherever we can. If there's one thing that I've learned over the year, it's that nobody, no single person, organization, or service has the answer to all of the Army's problems. As the Chief of Staff said at Congressional Breakfast this morning, when we go into challenging times, it's important to work together, and that's what we vowed to do. We will strengthen our S&T collaborations with other services, federally funded research development centers, national labs, academia, industry, and yes, other nations, because it's a global environment, and we need to understand how we work in that kind of environment. It is through collaboration that we will ensure that we continue to keep the best equipped and capable soldiers in the world. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to share a little bit about the S&T enterprise, one that I'm very proud and very privileged to speak on. It is enabling the Army of today and the Army of the future. Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is go down and ask my panel members some questions. Okay. So I'll start out with the requirements side. General Walker, as we look ahead in terms of modernizing the Army, what processes are you following to identify the gaps and assess relevant threats and opportunities that you talked about? Can you please explain?
Okay, ma'am. Here we go. I talked a little bit about this yesterday, so if you're in that panel, I apologize to talk about it again, but it's extremely important to understand. So the Army's approach is we have a campaign of learning. And what in the world is a campaign of learning? A campaign of learning is a series of seminars, war games, experiments, and studies that are designed to inform our concept work. What are the concepts? Our concepts are a working hypothesis. They articulate a military problem and a solution. And the concepts come from, Ms. Shyu mentioned early on in her introduction, the strategic guidance we receive from the nation. So specifically, our concepts right now are driven by the defense planning guidance, of which the Army has 10 of the 11 military tasks that impact the Army. They're driven by the nature of the operating environment, both the strategic environment and what we've referred to as a complex environment that our soldiers might face should the nation decide to employ them. And it's also informed by our history or by our lessons learned, particularly over the last 10 years or so. So the Army has what we call an Army concept framework. The Army concept framework has, and we do this every 2 years. The Army used to do concepts about every 5 years or so, but the technology and honestly the environment changes so much that we'd already be behind if we didn't do it faster. So about every 2 years we rewrite these. The capstone document, if you will, is called the Army Capstone Concept, very cleverly titled, which pretty much says this is what the Army must do. I mean, in light of the environment, in light of the strategic guidance lessons learned, what is it we have to do? An important question to ask ourselves. Then we write the Army operating concept. By the way, the capstone concept will be published here soon after AUSA. Then soon to be followed by the Army operating concept, how must we operate, and then we have functional concepts for each of our warfighting functions: intelligence, mission, command, movement and maneuver, sustainment, protection, and fires. We also have a couple of special concepts. We have one for training and leader development, and we have one for the human dimension. The human dimension is all about improving soldier cognitive, social, and physical performance. Extremely important. So from those concepts, then the next step is, okay, what capabilities do we have to have in order to make that concept a reality? And it is an inventory. So we have to have this many capabilities. Okay, then what capabilities do we currently have in the force? We have this many capabilities. And this is across the DOTML PF, Doctrine, Organization, Training, Material, Leader Development, Personnel, and Facilities. We look at it from that aspect. And the remainder is a gap, the capabilities that we do not have in which to operate. Then in short, I mean, it sounds really simple. You just simply prioritize these gaps. Which ones are more important than the others, informed by risk and the missions that we must do. It's not simple, but that is the process in which to do that. Then we have a list of prioritized gaps. We look at potential solutions to those gaps that we have to prioritize. Then it is a question of affordability for the Army. So in short, that is the process.
Thank you. General Barkley, now that we're transitioning from OCO to base, how do we plan to resource equipment modernization while funding the other Army accounts?
Well, you know, that's a challenge with wrestling with those OCO dollars we have had in the past and knowing that we're not going to have OCO dollars in the future. We've been working real hard with OSD to look at trying to identify any of those enduring requirements that would require, that are being paid for currently in OCO and then would have to transfer to the base. And really, we've done a pretty good job. Those programs that started with OCO, out of our training accounts, we've also taken money out of our depot maintenance accounts. Well, that ties to what Pat was talking about in the sustainment side of those programs, that we've got dollars to cover the procurement side, but it's maintaining and sustaining them, and then those depot accounts. So we've taken some risks there in the future. Now, currently, we're paying for all of our in-strength that's over 490K is being paid for by OCO. So we're, in the base budget, we're only programming for about 490K. Everything above that is coming out of OCO dollars. So that's, in some ways, that's helped us transfer some of those OCO costs and getting back to fixing the base budget to work at that. Then, of course, we've always said, as you know, in the future, we're going to need, OCO is not just about maintaining the war effort in Afghanistan. We're saying that somewhere between, you know, you can hear out there, but at least 2 to 3 years following the end of activities in Afghanistan, and whatever that end of activities is and how much the deployed force remains, that's kind of the benchmark we're using. But 2 to 3 years after that, we've still got a need for OCO dollars in the reset and to continue to get us back into shape to where we can meet the future needs. So that's sort of where we stand right now with that, ma'am.
That's great. Thank you so much. General Phillips, what has the Army done to increase collaboration across requirements, acquisition, and resourcing?
Ma'am, thank you. We actually have done quite a bit with the folks that are on this panel, and if it wasn't them personally, it was their predecessors who have been working so hard on a number of strategies that have brought the requirements, resourcing, acquisition, sustainment, S&T teams together. One of those is CPRs, Capability Portfolio Reviews, that started about the time I came into this job, about 20 months or so. I'm sorry, almost 2.5 years. A lot of those requirements, and we got after the acquisition strategy. And we tied another important aspect to that, which is the configuration steering boards. So as we executed a CPR, the Army Acquisition Executive, Ms. Shyu, chairs those today, configuration steering boards, which would follow the CPR, which would allow us to de-scope requirements based upon available resources that the G8 and the EquipPeg had available for that given portfolio, and we could drive toward making the right decision